afternoon. Okay, today we are going to continue from last week's session where we were looking at aspects of strategic HR, linking it to vision, um, aspects of culture, and today we want to get into the various aspects of culture. Looking at definitions for culture, looking at egg your shine. I hope you would have had time to actually go through um, at least the notes, looking at culture and different perspectives on culture. And there are a couple of housekeeping things I want to deal with. One, some resources I put into e-learning recently. I hope you were able to access them. Some tips I was suggesting of things you could do. And then I think last week I said the paper that we did, myself and colleagues, Dr. Allen and others, I want to just look at that paper, so I hope you had time to look at that paper also. And time allowing, we would start to look at HR planning. I don't think we'll be able to finish it, but we'll begin to look at it. Because today what I want to do, I want to be able to look at the general HR group. I want to meet with you about your project proposals. So we'll look at those project proposals, and then I want to meet the tourism group. I have a company for you, so I spoke to the deputy general manager who had responsibility for HR. So I'll meet with you to discuss your project and what we're going to look at, but she wants to meet with you next week. So that's something that is a good thing. We got somebody who's willing to have you assess their organization. And I also put up some guidelines for the oral case presentation. Everybody should know the case that you have to do is right. Hewlett Packard. Hi, good evening. The case is up. I put up some links that you would see the time frame. We'll do that case on the 29th of March. So it means that you need to start practicing and get together to prepare that case also. And I said I made a commitment. We'll do the recordings that if you wanted to go back to listen to anything, you could go back and listen to our recordings. Right? So maybe later in the latter part of the session, we'll just look specifically at those, the requirements for the case presentation, because I put up the rubric. So you already have the rubric, so you know what you have to do and where your marks will actually be allocated. Right? So everybody got access? Tracy, you have everything? Any questions? Any questions? Yes?
With the oral case, you had a date, the 11th of February, for the proposal. Is that the correct date that you're still?
No, I made a change to that, yeah.
Okay, I'll check it back again.
Right, yeah. For the proposal?
Yeah.
Well, it's due today, so that is...
No, not this one, the oral, the action one that you had put up.
But the action is not for you all. The action is for the tourism people. Your tourism?
No.
Right.
But I just wanted to know.
No, that's not you. I remember we said at the beginning, the tourism people do a special project.
Mm-hmm.
So the tourism project is different to your project. So anything actual learning is tourism, the tourism group.
Okay,
so once you see tour, that is not your thing. Tour is Rory and Nicole, right? Yours is to be just the 6107, right? So anything with tour, you just ignore that. Okay. Okay. So remember, folks, this is week 3. Semester is flying along. So I want you to really, start to make sure your reading is consistent. If you have any questions, Sasha, you're okay? Any questions? Right, welcome back, Tina. Well, I put up the notes, so you should be able to look at that, and I'm sure Sasha would have been updating you. Right, so Rory, you're comfortable? Everybody's good? Right, okay. So, culture is one of these very, very interesting topics. Can be complex. It varies from people's perspectives. And So if you remember last week what we did, there's some specific things that we did that I just wanted to refresh your memory. Definitions for HRM, strategic HR. So you dealt a lot with strategic HR or HR strategy. We just reviewed the IO versus RBV. So we were able to distinguish between the RBV and IO. So could you just refresh our memory? When we say IO, RBV, what are we talking about? Which are? The which one? Right, correct. So we looked at those two perspectives, and we looked at the link to business strategy, and we know the business strategy is the game plan for the organization, and we gave several definitions for that. We looked at some directional strategies that can be utilized. We also emphasized the importance of competitiveness, competitive advantage, sustainable competitive advantage, and we had discussed. And we also looked at, when it comes to looking at this HRM, we're going to be focusing on utilizing the RBV, which is internalizing, look at your internal resources. So we said that there are two critical concepts that you need to be mindful of, and that is the issue of the core competencies and distinctive competencies. And we said, Tracy, there's an alignment of distinctive competencies to the resource-based view. So could you explain that alignment for us? What is that alignment all about? Can you tell us? Hello? The alignment with the RBV, the resource-based view, and distinctive competencies. What's the relationship? I forgot your name again.
Dave Nell.
Dave Nell. Yes, Dave Nell.
I remember distinctive competencies means it's a unique skill towards that particular company.
How is it related to the RBV? Right, so behind Rory. So Rory, you're next, eh?
What I remember us discussing last week, certainly from the resource-based view, because distinctive competencies are held by many of your human resources. So
right.
Designing an approach that not only maintains but builds that those distinctive competencies. So like when we were discussing things like voluntary separation, about keeping those human resources that hold distinctive competencies.
So how is that aligned to the RBV? What does the RBV say?
You should basically have your resources, which is the human resource really, to be able to, to link it to competitive advantage rather, is to be able to let them not have their abilities imitated.
Right. So if they have rare or unique skills or competencies which cannot be easily imitated, and what's the third component of the RBV? Substituted. Which means that the employer just can't determine one day, oh, we don't need you anymore, let's get somebody else. Because these distinctive competencies are so unique, they are not easily replaced or substituted. Right? So that's how you would incorporate the concept of the RBV. So we said, remember, they are only distinctive when there's some unique, really, really high quality, high value competencies that they possess. Because if your competitor can easily imitate them or easily find some substitute, it means you don't have any distinctive competence. And that's why we say it can gain you a competitive advantage, because there are some unique things that you possess. So you need to read up on those core and distinctive competencies, the linkage, and then we looked at also best fit and best practice here. How do you distinguish between best fit and best practice?
Well, best fit was those adaptations looking at what the current model is and what would best fit to this current model of the organization, whereas best practice looks more outside of the box and looks globally at all different processes and standards which are out there, and then applies the best practice one. So it's
Correct.
say higher up the risk sometimes to maybe apply the best practice one, whereas it can be faster implemented and sometimes be more profitable than the one with the best fit.
Correct. Excellent. In other words, the best practice is external, where the best fit is an internal way you try to do it yourself. So which would be most time consuming, which might be more costly and challenging? Best fit or best practice?
Best fit.
You say best practice? Why?
Well, no, sorry, because I remember that best practices basically will not imitate others, but you already take information as out there. So I guess I wouldn't say that.
Okay, right. Best fit, because you're trying to do it. Best practice is you said basically you look at what is there, you customize it, make it relevant to your needs. It's really low cost. But it might not be able to get the fit. There might be some cultural or other differences making it challenging and difficult. So those two concepts are concepts. Sometimes we use them in the exam to test your knowledge and understanding of them. So we're looking at culture. Somebody, can you tell me? Welcome, Donna.
Hey.
I just got fake news about you. Fake news. The Trumpism. Huh?
You mean Tracy? I'm Peter.
I thought you said Donna.
No.
I swore you said Donna. So, tell us, somebody, what is culture? Generally, not necessarily organizational culture. The way we do things, what else? Behaviors, values, norms, belief systems. Why do we have these things? What's the main purpose of having these things? Who you are, a way of life.
But it brings commonality to a group.
Right, commonality to group and distinguish one group from the other group, and mechanisms to survive.
Reduces uncertainty.
Right. Sorry?
It reduces uncertainty.
It reduces uncertainty, and people love certainty. We don't like uncertainty. Right? So all you said is quite correct, and there are a number. They said Edgar Schein is noted as one of the gurus, one of the big gurus of culture, and he's written a lot specifically about organizational culture. But he's saying for culture, this pattern of shared assumptions, right? Shared assumptions learned by a group. And if you look at the point you're making here for external adaptation and internal integration, that's what he's talking about for culture, particularly in the context of an organization. So folks, I think by now you should appreciate, you would see there are two concepts that are consistently being pushed here, and that is one, that is you always have the external versus the internal. Right? And these are concepts you need to be very mindful of. Right? So they're not mutually exclusive, but they're interrelated. That there's an external environment that exists. But even if you look at the human being itself, the human being is like a system. Right? Working parts, functioning parts. We take in inputs and to have outputs going out. So human beings have to interact with an external environment, just as organizations have to interact with an environment, but also countries have to interact with the world or the globe as a whole. So that concept is something that you need to appreciate, the external and external forces. And in this case, he's saying for culture, it is external adaptation and internal integration. So Tracy, why is he choosing these particular words? External adaptation and internal integration. Why is he choosing these particular words that I have highlighted? Who wants to try? What's happening here? Yes, Rory.
Okay, so external adaptation and internal integration come because first off, the culture is basically stems from and comes from the founder of the organization. And then as an organization starts up and tries to become successful, they will have to adapt to the external reality if they are going to be successful. And of course, the culture will only survive if the organization is successful, otherwise would disappear. But then as they become successful, they will probably, or in all likelihood, seek to expand. And then when new members come, they influence the culture. So they have to go through that socialization process, and it brings new challenges for integration, especially if that growth happens at a very fast pace. So always culture has to change to what's happening outside, but also
It has to change or adapt.
but I'm using the change and adapt interchangeably. But
Right.
maybe it's a different-
Because change is that. Change means it's change.
But yeah, it has to adapt to what's going on outside, because that's why they say that culture can be a major reason why things fail when externally things are changing, but internally the culture has a very strong culture that's well adapted to realities that would no longer exist.
Can cultures be totally changed?
It
Some
has to
cases.
depend on who's at the top, because to me culture is something derived from the top management or go down. So say for example, you probably change the CEO, then you may be able to kind of shift the culture. It might take a while, but
Shift how?
you might believe in different things, then you have the different types of organizations.
So I've been working there for 30 years, 25 years, 20 years. You think it's going to get me to change significantly? And I've been there 25 years and I'm 60 years old. How is he going to change me?
But
I'm just asking the question. Yes, Donna? Right, so what Tracy is saying then, the way he can change me is to change me, meaning he removes me from the environment as opposed to trying to change me internally. But can anybody really change anybody? You're saying adult. You think Tina? You think somebody?
The only thing I'm thinking about is but if things around you are changing and you have remained the same, then you no longer fit within the structure, and you're either gonna change somehow, either remove yourself, be removed, or make some adaptation to the new environment.
So you're basically saying, if around you is changing significantly,
Yes, you will have to change.
yeah, you have. Well, you either
Change one way or the other.
adapt, or you have to remove yourself from the situation. You agree, Tina? Yeah. But can anybody change anybody though? Once you become an adult? This is what I'm saying. Can anybody change anybody? But listen what I'm saying. Can anybody change anybody?
But when you say change, define what you mean by change.
Literally what I'm saying. I'm the leader. Can I change Donna?
No, you can't change my attitude. You can't change those things.
Nobody can change anybody. You mean your leader can try to influence me for me to make a decision to change, but any change that happens to me, I have to make upon the decision I want to change.
Yeah.
So no other human being cannot change another human being.
But you're not trying to change a person, because you can have a very strong organizational culture where somebody comes into that and they integrate into that organizational culture while they're at work. But that doesn't reflect how they are. That doesn't mean that that's how they are at home. That just means that they understand the expectations that come with working at this organization. And so if the expectations change from the leadership, especially if it's the same leadership, then they will change along with it, because it's simply a matter of, okay, this is the new reality of what we have to do around here.
You ever saw this word before, Rory?
Dissonance.
Anybody knows what this means?
When you have
Well, Rory suggesting I can remain who I am and still be different. Yeah, you gotta be really psychotic. You know, because the reality is, if you say values and beliefs, you hear the saying values and beliefs. So there's something called cognitive dissonance, and this is where when your belief system or value system is contradicted by a particular environment, unless you do what Donna said and resolve to adapt, you're going to be a very unhappy person.
But it doesn't mean that you betray any core values, really. It can just to do with behavior. So, I mean, I was watching this film, this psychologist who gives aggressiveness training to women to try to close the gender pay gap. Now, if he puts them through this aggressiveness training, they may go into the workplace and be more aggressive. That doesn't mean they're going to be more aggressive at home. That suddenly they're going to change their attitude of how they're speaking to their children and so on. So you can have two different realities.
But you're missing one point, Rory. Suppose my value system is I do not believe a woman needs to go through any aggressiveness training. Suppose in my value system, I don't believe a woman should go through aggressiveness
But
training.
then she not even go to training, so it's out of the picture.
Sorry?
She wouldn't even go to the training in the
Right,
beginning.
so that's the point I'm making. So if my value, so what you're talking about can only happen when your value system and belief happen to marry to the organization. But if you hold a particular strong belief and values, right? If you remember we said before, culture is about your values and beliefs. You know, so a value and belief isn't anything that you can get up one morning. Okay, I don't believe this anymore. You know, it isn't any or value. You know, so it isn't anything you can get it to change. So we're talking about values and beliefs here, which are strongly held things for an individual person, which could be grounded in a number of things. Now it depends on what it is grounded in. Now, what would make it very what is one of the things that we find all over the world are things that would make it very difficult for people when their values and beliefs are grounded in particular things? What are some of the things that ground values and beliefs that people don't compromise on? Religion. And the word is very religious or spiritual. So once it gets forced to people's religious beliefs, that is irrelevant. Don't compromise. They do not compromise. If this particular religious belief is something they grew up with and is a critical part of their belief system. So if the organization contradicts it, so let's give an example. An organization where people using foul language, right, is acceptable. What Trump does, those very offensive comments. So some people, oh, that's just him. Other people take offense to it, even from the Republicans. So I'm saying if your value system is, it is not right for anybody to use in that kind of language to other people, and it's a strong value and belief, you have now started to work in company X. And in your department, it is a common practice. It's a culture. You think you can survive in that environment? How long do you think you can survive in that environment? If it's a...
It depends on what's clear to me. If I need money, I will suck it up when I'm at work, even though I believe something different. And possibly until I can do better, but while I'm there, it will not leave, or I'm not going to change me, but I will not want to change the organizational culture.
But it means it means that what John is saying. So what you do then, Tracy, you are adapting and integrating that. You're allowing when you're on the job, your belief is that you're really basically saying, I am relaxing my beliefs to fit in. So you're basically adapting and adjusting. You understand? So you are really and by doing that, by allowing yourself to bend, you are integrating into the way and the practice. Because you're basically saying, while I'm here, I will do these things because they're really not me, and I will do them because I want to survive.
I'm not saying I would do them. I would be okay having to be in that organizational culture.
But
I'm not going to start cursing them.
But it's accepting, though. The fact that you can be there with it means you are accepting. Well, I can't do anything about it. Let me just live with it. So you're accepting in a way. So you're, as Donna is saying, you are adapting and integrating.
And I think that's what we do. I don't think we would be able to change our values and our culture and who we are at our core. But I definitely do believe that we adapt given the circumstance and what our needs are.
But that's remember what I said here, how strong your belief and values are, it creates a dissonance where you just can't live with it. And if you don't talk about it, it bothers you. You might not share with people at work, but when you leave, you feel violated. I don't like what they're doing there. And you go back to work and you leave, and that's what the dissonance is. You go, you tolerate it, but then when you leave, you say, why am I allowing myself to do this for money? I know this is wrong. So it's working at a place where, Tina, you don't believe that stealing is correct. But you're working in a department where you know people are stealing, and you are not doing anything about it. Now, if you are somebody who realizes that if I had the opportunity to steal, I will steal, and that's your value system, it wouldn't bother you. And there are people like that. That's why people steal money from organizations, and they steal a lot of people's money in the financial services sector, and they sleep. There's some people like that. They just don't care. Some people, that's their value system. You know, like some people who kill people. There are people who will kill people cold-bloodedly. You know, like that's the reality. Some people will kill people cold-bloodedly and go home and sleep. Like it doesn't bother them because that's their value system, right? You understand what I'm saying? Like, that happens all over the world, all over the world, right? There's some case I heard. I think it's India, where somebody's nephew raped he was dating, I think his niece or cousin, an 8-year-old girl. An Indian guy raped. He's 26. Raped his own niece, 8 years old. But that's a big problem in India. You know, men, really raping women in public. It's a big, big problem in India. But culturally, a lot of these men don't see anything wrong with it. So, you know, raping little girls. So, but that's the culture that they're trying to change. But if these fellas believe that there's nothing too much wrong with it, they will do it. So I think in an organization, folks, you know, if you meet something that violates your value system, you go through dissonance where you're bothered. And when you leave work, you say, oh my gosh, this is not right. Right? This is not right. Right? But you might not talk about it for fear, so you just go ahead and you accommodate and you accommodate. Some bold people will speak out about it, but where is something you're fearful about? And as you said, Tracy, I have heavy bills. I really cannot leave this job right now. So where you're forced to go into a job where something violates your value system, you experience cognitive dissonance, which is really an emotional turmoil, where the brain is getting contradictory, or the emotions are getting contradictory messages. That your value system says, this is wrong, I don't believe in it, but you're being forced and being exposed to such things. So it is shared beliefs, and this is what we said, you know, and this is an important one about shared beliefs. It means that the majority of people share these beliefs, right? And these codes are feelings on the basis of what the group has learned to live in its environment. So once you get to feelings, folks, you know, what is the challenge about feelings? What is challenging about people's feelings, AJ? What do you think?
They are not always openly apparent, so you don't actually can see them all the time.
That's it. Yeah. And there's a quote I use that says, you know, feelings are everywhere, be gentle. So feelings are these intangible things that are real for human beings. But how are you going to know how somebody feels, Donna? How do we know how somebody feels?
They have to express it verbally, body language.
Right.
And that's the only way you can figure it out.
But because I'm smiling doesn't mean I'm not in pain. I may have a high pain tolerance. So on the job, folks, workers can be experiencing emotional pain, and they come to work and they smile. And you think everything is okay, but they're going through a lot of painful feelings. So the point I'm saying, culture is this very complex thing about human beings and the beliefs we have and the values we have and things we think we share. Right? And of course, there are extremes, you know, extremes, issues of racism, extreme people having weird religious beliefs or spiritual beliefs. There are people discriminate against each other, men discriminating, men feeling, again, because of certain religious beliefs, that men are superior to women. So if men are born with that belief based on your religion, that men are superior to women, that's how you're going to behave, right? So the only ways you're going to get men to change from that, you will have to then, just what we said earlier, they will have to make conscious decisions through education that over time, you want to be integrated into something else. But these things are very difficult to change. Yes, Rory?
So do you think this kind of wave of sensitivity coming from the political left, where they're hitting back at everything, fat shaming, this shaming, that shaming, anything Roth said becomes a big issue. Do you think that's forcing organizations to change their culture to reflect that kind of new reality?
That's a very interesting comment, you know. Now, I think what is happening around the world actually, that minorities are beginning to speak out.
Yes.
Yeah, that's all that's happening, you know.
But I think that's somewhat different, because if you're going to look at the racial component, that's I think that's something different. But when you look at like the fact that now it's weird with everything that it become this big movement about they're shaming somebody for wearing this type of shoes and stuff like
No,
that.
but when I say minority, I don't mean racial. I'm saying minority could be somebody who wants to dress in a particular way. This is a group of people who want to wear a particular type of hat. This is a group of people who want to ride a particular type of bike.
But
So, so when I say minorities, I'm talking about minorities because of what you believe in. So I'm not talking about racial or other divisions. So a minority is just a group of people who want to do something differently. So I think we have always been very intolerant to people having a divergent view.
But
Right.
the reason I asked the question is because you get this this impression that the boardroom in the U.S., the kind of corporate culture, was very, very aggressive. Like, yeah, it's hard talk. You're not going to come, a bit like Scaramucci kind of hard talk. They're going to hit each other kind of hard.
That's his
But-
culture. He's Italian, and they have a way of.
But
But
then-
Rory, but I'm saying minority. Then hear these facts, folks. Do you know?
His culture and twist
But
to
it
that
would seem
position.
the organization
Rory,
would
but
have,
don't-
would have to change now.
Rory, let's look at the facts, right? Do you know, folks, when British women got the right to vote, and Britain was supposed to be a democracy for centuries. You know when women in Britain got the right to vote? 1918, just the other day. You know when American women got the right to vote? In 1940s. This is the 300-year democracy. You imagine, Tina, a 300-year democracy, but women were only allowed to vote in the 1940s. So when I say minorities, I'm saying like it's only the other day women were allowed to vote. And America is the few Western countries where a woman has never been the leader. It has happened in Asian countries, Islamic countries, nearly all the Western European countries. But the US is one of the few countries that is supposed to be a democracy where after nearly 300 years, there's never been a female president. Now, my view is that it is deep core in the US culture that people, even women, don't feel comfortable with their president being a woman. And it's simple to me, the culture is so steep that the average American does not feel comfortable. But after 200 and nearly 300 years, and there's never been one female president, folks, that is cultural. It can't be that you didn't have enough educated women, or enough political women, or enough competent women. So the question is, why, out of all the Western democracies, you're the only one basically standing out now that never ever had a female president? So what I'm saying is, I'm saying a minority groups, is not only about racial, but I'm saying anybody who is doing something differently, right? So it could be somebody who determined that we like to see the stars, or we don't believe in God. Right? So I think we've always been very intolerant to people who have minority or divergent opinions. I think what is happening today because of social media, what is happening, right, but what is happening, Tracy, I might not be comfortable to go in public and speak, but I can speak in social media. Right? I can speak in social media, I can have a voice in Facebook, I can have a voice in Twitter, I can have a voice. So I think what is happening now, a lot of people who were fearful about expressing their divergent views have the platform now to share with the whole world, I have a different opinion. So what you're seeing now in the boardroom and outside the boardroom are people expressing their divergent opinions in many, 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 many ways. And I think the world is now trying to grapple with that so many people have so many divergent beliefs, values, which I think is a good thing. How we manage this complexity now, I think, is the issue. Yes, Tracy? Go ahead, Tracy.
I was just going to say no with the social media and that platform. The minorities now are making what was the norm seem like the wrong thing to do. I was on social media the other day, and it doesn't have to do with HR, but I was supposed to comment by this guy, he's saying, and not to offend anybody, but children now in certain schools are being taught that you are not born male or female.
That's in Canada. Yeah.
And that your children have no choice anymore because the minorities now believe that they must be represented in the schools. So you're straight and you're a Christian and your child is now going to school, but it has to be confused. That's how I feel about it. Not only with are not born either male or female. That you is all about how you're socialized, and so I just find that the minorities are becoming, the voice is becoming, in some cases, even stronger than what was the norm.
Yes, Donna.
Actually, my point is kind of similar because when you started to talk about cognitive dissonance, then you spoke about the minority group. The first thing that popped up to me was LGBTQ community,
Yeah.
who are really, stating their case. They want to get married. They want to have a regular life.
And I will have
Like,
equal rights.
They want to have
Right.
equal rights.
But
Now, whereas
they're
no, I'm not. No, I don't have a. That's
But-
fine.
Let her finish.
But
Let her
it
finish.
wasn't that I have an opinion or anything. I'm just sharing
Yeah.
the difference. So they're fighting for that, whereas these very strict religious people are saying, listen, that's not good in the sight of God. That's totally against the Bible. It's not in the Bible. So there are very strong arguments on both sides for this, but they each are fighting for their point. So if you're working in an organization that is gay friendly, and there's nothing wrong with it, but you have strong religious views about it, then you are going to be in a place of cognitive
Correct.
dissonance.
Yes.
Because this thing is
Correct.
around you,
Yes.
it makes you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
If on the other hand, you are fine, it doesn't matter one way or the other, but these people are pushing this religious thing on you all the time.
Yeah.
But not necessarily that you're gay or anything, it's just that it doesn't matter to you. You don't see people, you don't see people gay, straight, or whatever, you just see people.
Right.
But they're continuously pushing that agenda, then you are also going to be in a place of cognitive dissonance because it's going to make you uncomfortable.
So in terms of the modern workplaces, I think what is making it complex in that in past, because so many minority views were silent,
Mhm.
you had what appeared to be homogenous workplaces,
Mhm.
but you had a lot of people who were suffering from cognitive dissonance. You know,
Yes.
that they had different beliefs, but they just didn't express these views and beliefs, you see? So what is making it a little more complex now, which is Rory's point about people demanding their rights,
Mhm.
is that people are now coming out to say, I have a
This is
right,
real.
I have a different belief, I have a different value system. So all it is doing is forcing organizations to realize now that your culture, your organizational culture is not homogeneous,
Mhm.
right? That you have so many different mix of people with different beliefs and values. So how can organizations now negotiate these institutions now that have people who are insisting, you need to appreciate that I have some rights that shouldn't be appreciated that are not being appreciated now, which is Donna's point. That is an issue. But you see the culture, but one of the points I want to make is that national culture also shapes
Yes.
organizational culture. Right? So national culture would impact on the kind of organizational culture you will have in both public and private sectors. And as you go through the world, if you go to Asia, if you go to Africa, if you go to Latin America, if you go to Western Europe, I'm sure, Tina, that Eastern Europe would have some cultural values that are different to Western Europe. Yeah, you see, and then you got certain different ethnic groups. So the complexity, folks, is all over the world. Right? That even in the continent, so France is not totally homogenous. You will still have minority groups that have different ways of looking at things. Even in Britain, with the Irish versus the Brits, going back centuries and centuries. So even the Irish are saying, no, in fact, the Scottish, you know what the Scottish are saying in the UK now? There's a growing body to say we want independence. We are not British, we are Scottish. So it's growing, so I can see in the next maybe 20, 30, 40 years, that Scotland will actually break away from the UK. So you will have Scotland as a separate and distinct country. Because Scotland, even the persona of Scottish people, because I lived in England for a while, the persona of Scottish people, when I interact, in fact, I find they're warmer. You know? The Scottish people tend to be much warmer. They tend to be like more Caribbean to me, right? But the Scottish people are saying, no, we are different. We have a different value system to the British. But of course, they are British people who live in Scotland. So your point, Donna, so if Scotland now becomes independent, what is going to happen to the British people who would believe in their British, and they're just British by nature, and they're proud of being British, you see. I think it makes the world a beautiful place for us to negotiate the turf.
But that's exactly what I was going to say. Fight in organizations now, and even with religion, they're not advancing or adapting to these changes as fast as society's changing.
Yeah.
I think right now they're just going from the, as you said, the homogenous view and
Yeah.
being for the majority to being for the minorities now and not caring about the feelings or the beliefs of the majority anymore because the minorities have been keeping so much noise for so long. I in workplaces, I think you still need to find a way to balance both and realize that you have both beliefs and both value systems in your organization and not just go from respecting the majority to now respecting the minority, but having the majority and they're going through this cognitive dissonance now because they're being forced to accept and tolerate things that are not there.
But how does an organization do that?
I think Rory and Donna, yes.
Sorry.
See, I think you make a good point there because I agree with the counterpoint. You say yes, there's more diversity of views, but not necessarily so because what there is there's greater tribalism, right? Right now is the dominance of the left, right? So, but when it comes to anybody who wants to speak up, who may have a problem with immigration, they are shut out. We don't want to hear you. You know, anybody that comes with right-wing views, I mean, they're kicked out of universities and not allowed to speak. You know, they're kicked out of workplaces because they may say that they don't believe in gay marriage. So suddenly your intolerance gets out, and they accuse the left accuses them of being intolerant when actually the left is intolerant of listening to their views because they disagree with them. But then with this increased tribalism, that must be affecting workplaces because people are not discussing anymore. We don't want to hear you, and we don't want to hear you.
So where would diverge is if your right is to violate my right.
Yes.
You understand? If you're indicating my right is to violate your right, that you have no place. So if I'm arguing, I have a right to say you have no place here.
Exactly.
You see, so it's contradictory to what you're saying. So
But-
I think.
No, but you know what he's saying.
But to get to that point, right? Because the point is made that, for example, there are arguments that people bring against the dangers and the pitfalls of immigration or uncontrolled immigration. And now within that, they say you have a racist element, and because there's a racist element in that argument, the entire field that brings that argument is completely dismissed. Whereas it's not entirely informed by a racist element. That's just a small part of those. So because a lot of right-wing views come with a racist element, or that don't respect other people's rights, they dismiss them. They dismiss all the views. So we don't want to hear any of it. So I mean, it's the same way somebody can disagree with gay marriage without being. I mean, you can disagree with gay marriage, but be happy to sit down with somebody in class and, you know,
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
that is gay or married to somebody or whatever.
But if somebody says, Rory, if
But
somebody
then they will
says,
dismiss your views because they say, because.
but
some
if somebody
people-
says, gay people should not exist.
That's different.
No, but
Yeah.
that's what
Right.
we're trying to say, that there are a set of people that are not saying. So
Right.
for me, I tolerate gay people. But when
You see, tolerate?
No, even I'm okay with them. I'm okay with
But toleration is different.
Yeah, now you're okay. No, sorry, okay, but I'm okay with gay people. I will have gay friends. We can live good.
Yeah.
Now, when you decide that my child, I'm not gay, but my child has to be called, I wasn't born with the gender, and I tell you that I don't like that, it's not me saying that I don't like gay people. And I think that that's where the issue is coming up, that we can no longer say anything. There are two sides to this.
Yes. And that was the point that I wanted to just bring together, is that all of these things have really disrupted what we know as a norm or the culture that we have grown accustomed to. And my thing is, how do organizations deal with this? Tracy said, you go too far left, but you hurt your right.
Yeah.
You stay right, but you hurt your left. How do organizations manage these diverging views and about
Donna,
everything?
there's one simple way
Whoever thought it worked.
there's one simple way human beings can resolve these complex issues. You know what it is? You want to tell me you think, Sashi?
I mean, in my organization, we can share our views about anything, but in general, it's the saying that private topics should stay in the private area
it's really saying then,
it's rising, it's becoming disruptive. Everybody has a right. Atheists, don't tell me about God, but the religious people say yes, and then it's
You
disruptive.
can always say, I accept your view, but I'm of a different opinion.
yes.
But that doesn't
That's what
mean
we do too. But
you can work together in the workplace,
Mhm.
no matter what your values are.
Right.
That's what we would like it to be.
but
But
we're
it's
not
going
seeing
too
that.
far left. Yeah, it's going too far left now. Because I'm just certain people like me. What you want to do? I really don't care. You don't come into my house. It don't affect me. Have fun. Do what you want to do. But then you want to have rights that affect what I do. And I don't think that's right. Just let me do what I want to do. You do what you want to do. And we all live happy.
But you see, but the dialogue, what we're doing, I think the dialogue where people talk about these things in a way without getting offended and antagonistic. But obviously, a lot of these issues are very, very sensitive issues. And once you have, and I think what Seshia said is really how organizations can try to avoid the extreme positions, because you always have extreme people where it becomes very, very conflicting, so that you can have your personal views. Now here, I don't know if it happens in Finland and Germany, but here I'm amazed at going in organizations. I'm painting on the wall, Jesus Christ is Lord and Savior. So all over is these things about Christianity, all on the walls and the notice boards, the offices, public boards. People put their personal beliefs all over the organ, but suppose I am an Adventist, suppose I am a Jew, suppose I am atheist. But so you see, so they move beyond their spaces and they put them all over the organization. They put them at the entrance, they put them on the public notice boards. But again, that is, I call it a small island, a small island dynamic.
But you find that owners who have particularly strong beliefs on
Yeah.
certain things will encourage their particular beliefs within the organization.
No, we just
creating the culture.
well, we discriminate because we don't have a lot of good laws at the police. We have a lot of people who discriminate against people from employment. We discriminate in hiring in a big, big way.
Of course,
Yeah, a lot of big discrimination here, you see. Yeah. But if we can have people discussing the way we discuss, and they're very complex issues, folks dealing with the humans and people. In fact, last night when it was going on, I had a late class, and I was listening to a BBC program, and I learned a new word last night that I didn't know, identitarianism. You heard about it, or you should read about it. And identitarianism really is a set of far-right racists who are of the view that the world should be ruled by white people, and that they don't believe in race mixing, right? But I never heard the term. It was only the BBC was interviewing some guy, some far-right racist guy, and he was saying, look, white people are here to rule the world. He said, yes, people want to beat me, they want to kill me, but I'm saying this same point we are saying here, I'm expressing my views, these are my beliefs, and he was strong about it. But I have never heard the word before, identitarianism, right? And apparently,
bring people to the middle by shutting them off.
Sorry?
Do you think you bring these extremes closer to the middle by shutting them off?
By shutting?
By saying that I don't want to listen to you. Do you think we bring them closer to the middle like that?
No, but they can't. But Rory, you see, legally they can't stop them, but you need to tell them we don't want these kind of people to get too much of a voice, you see, because you see there's a danger in Hitlerism, in that, the thing about Hitler is that people started to tolerate these very extreme views, you see, so you always need balance, right? So I think it is that the same way they have a right to speak, and I agree with they need to speak, they need to have a balance for people to say, look, what you're talking about is going to be destructive, it's going to cause a lot of strife and things around the world.
Because if you go down that path, then people like Malcolm X, they would have said, oh, you don't have the right to speak.
Well, no, listen, I said they have a right to speak, that's what I said. But somebody has a right to say to them, Rory, right?
Yeah,
they have a right to
exactly.
speak. But I'm saying somebody has the right to say what you're saying is dangerous and is going to cause a lot of destruction and cause people to be hurt. You see, because I'm saying in today's world, when somebody is coming with that nonsense about that white people are to rule the world, that's dangerous stuff. And I believe there are millions of white people around the world with disassociated with that kind of ignorance. It's total ignorance. But the reality is they have a platform. And I mean the fact that BBC is actually bringing it and highlighting it, but I've never heard, you ever heard the word before?
I did.
Huh?
Yes, I did.
Right,
I'm from Germany, so yeah.
Sorry?
I'm from Germany, so yeah.
Right, but I've never heard it before actually. The first time I'm hearing it, yeah. So I was actually researching it to find out, what it was all about. Right.
American white nationalist movement
Right, that's it. Yeah. But before, but so the point you're saying, I think the issue, folks, we're discussing here, looking at different cultures, because globalization occurred and so many people are going across different countries, and people are moving, different races, different ethnic groups, different religious groups are moving all over the world, and technology allows people to share so much information. I think the challenge for us in workplaces that are very multicultural and multi-values and multi-belief is, I think maybe what Sashia said just now, the organization will have to set some protocols as to what things, should be discussed in the office environment. So that if people have very strong personal views, you need to have some kind of protocol that would ensure that within the context of the organization, if you have your personal views, right, we respect their differences, but you need to be cautious that in a meeting, you don't get up in a meeting discussing business to start to express your personal views about other stuff, you see? Yeah. So I think it's something we would need to start to look at when we appreciate there's so many different cultures. And Barbados, remember, Donna, when we had that issue even with Guyanese,
Yes.
right? Guyana was having, right? Well, I think for Tina and Sashia's view, right? There was a time when Guyana, about 10, 15 years ago, was going through some very severe economic difficulties. And a lot of the Guyanese were so there were a whole set of Guyanese which are our neighbors just about a few miles away. A lot of them were coming in, but illegally. So they will come, just like the US, they will come on a short-term stay, and then they will stay over. And then there was a time when even the immigration, we were treating them badly, when Bajans, there was a whole political thing. You got to chase them out. But then they were hard workers, so a lot of Barbadians would hire them. They were very hard workers.
But Barbadians didn't want to do the job
that they were
correct.
doing.
Right.
But I saw that there was a video about, they told you it was about Trump at the end, but the video was basically saying, have you ever been in your car at night and a black guy walked past your car and until the end you felt the need to lock the doors because you just didn't feel safe? I'm black and I have, most definitely.
Yeah.
Have you ever felt like your job was in jeopardy or was being threatened because of immigrants? Yes, again. And then the answer again, there was about two more things, I can't remember them right now, but the answer again was, this is why Trump is president. Because you feel these things, you may not have ever voiced them because you don't want to appear as though you're a racist or you're whatever, but you feel this way. And that's why he got it, because so many people felt these things about everything that was going on in America that they wanted to say.
So the same thing we are saying as with national culture, corporate culture looks at this is another contentious thing here. It talks about acceptable ways to think, act, and behave within the organization. Now, what is acceptable? Tina, how are we going to define acceptable? Acceptable ways to think, act, and behave. Now, this is Shine. Right? I'm not saying that he's right or wrong. I'm saying this is his argument. What are your views on his argument? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry? It's just like acceptable. What is acceptable? What is proper?
Could you look at it from the fact that with organizations, they want to project a particular image, right? So in order for you to project that image to the general mass, you're going to say, these are the certain ways that I would like for my staff to behave. So you consider it to be quote unquote proper or acceptable ways to project the image that you want them to feel.
Right. So who determines acceptable? What is the basis for acceptable? Is the owners? Is it the person? If it's a private business, is it the owner of the business who determines what he or she considers to be acceptable? Is it the board?
Yes. But when they read it, all they got was like when they room do what they room do.
Right.
So if that is what accept, if this is what is the norm or what's accepted, and you really want to see, you want to, for lack of a better word, like fit in to the actual culture and the actual body of the organization, you would need to do what are the norms, what are the guidelines, what is the policy you need to follow. If you can't follow, you follow.
So maybe what we have, organizations will have called the corporate values. Might be getting to here. We have a set of corporate values. I give you a real life story of Lee Iacocca, who was the general manager of General Motors. This is all back in the 90s. So Lee Iacocca was one of the most successful general managers that I think it was Chrysler. I think it was Chrysler or General Motors. But he was one of the most top general managers, where his plant was very, very productive and successful. But there was I think a GM, I think it was GM, there was a GM culture, a way in which they dressed. There was a particular type of suit they wore, a particular color. You know, organizations have color codes. I think they had a particular color code. But Lee Iacocca refused to wear the color coded suits that they were wearing. And then he started to do some norms outside of the ways in which he ran his business. And at some point, management called him, senior management said, listen, you're violating our management codes. You need to change. And he refused to change, and they fired him. Now listen, he was one of the most productive general managers, big sales and profits. But Donna, they gave him an ultimatum. You better conform or leave. And they fired him. You see the point I'm making? So their position was, nobody will violate the corporate culture. Right? You're not bigger than this organization. Now, so the question there then, Rory, is that organization unfair in firing him? Because your point was, people have a right to be heard. So do you think that was a wrong decision? Was it a right decision that he's violating the corporate executive norms?
Well, whether they're right or wrong, I think depends on whether or not they're at a point where they need to change their culture. And I like what Shine said with that, is that you have too many organizations nowadays who are trying to come in, and CEOs coming in and trying to change a culture because that's best practice, or they've seen it work somewhere else, and not actually asking themselves, do we have a problem with the culture that we need to change it? And if there's no problem, don't change it. So if he was coming into an organization that had a problem with its culture that needed to change for either reasons of external adaptation or internal, and he was changing it, then he was doing the right thing, and they're stupid for firing him, because they're going to stagnate the company at a time when it needs to change. However, if there's no reason to change, and he's coming in and he's wanting to change the culture because what he did work somewhere else that may have no bearing on this organization, then yeah, fire him. Because
but I don't think he was trying to change. Don't forget, they would have had a series of general managers. He was just one of many general managers. He managed one of the plants, you see, but there were other people at his level.
okay.
So it's right. So there were about 5 or 6 plants. He managed one of the outlets. So there were other persons at his level, you see. So he wasn't the person in charge of the organization.
I thought he was more
No, he wasn't in charge. He reported, I think, to a president or somebody like that, you see. So he was just doing his own thing. In other words, he did it the Lee Iacocca way. And they were basically saying, Tina, that is the Lee Iacocca way, but there is a GM way. And you better do it the GM way. And it wasn't so much about the production or sales, it was just about the culture and the norms and the values, the ways in which the management team behaved, you see.
Yeah, I think they're right, because culture is the reason that they've been successful. I mean, I can say from my former work experience that it was kind of pretty much a culture that if you're in journalism, you don't clock in and clock out. If you're leaving on the dot every single day, you don't pass probation. I mean, it's not a written rule, but I can tell you.
But it's the norm.
Pass probation.
It's the norm, yeah. So that's a good example, actually, of culture where the acceptable ways to think, act, and behave, and it might not necessarily have been written, but it's just some norms that people inculcated. But you see what your point, which he's saying here, those who choose not to do things in the proper way do not last long with the organization. They're told, we don't do things like that here. And this is another set of levels. The artifacts, what you experience with your senses, such as language, style, stories, published statements, exposed beliefs and values, the ideals, the goals, and the aspirations. This is the one that creates a lot of problems. Or underline this one, this is a hard one. Taken for granted conditions. In other words, it is things about you, Tracy, that you don't even know. And this one, these underlying beliefs are things that you have inculcated, maybe from your heritage, that you're not conscious of. Right? Prejudices that you have, but you're not even conscious that I'm prejudiced. Like even if somebody told you that, you say, no, I'm not. But it is, and we say underlying beliefs, right? Because there are things that are taken for granted. So you might behave in a way, or when there is some situation that comes up where you get to express a view, people say, wait, why did I know Donna felt that way? Right? So that's what you're talking about here. These underlying beliefs, things that are there, like the foundation to who you are. Because folks, the way we are as persons and human beings are not much divorced from the person that goes to work. It's just basically the same person, just following some rules and regulations. So when I go to an organization, my beliefs don't change, my values don't change, my underlying assumptions don't change. Right? Now, over time, which is the point we mentioned earlier, I might make a choice to be integrated, where over time I might begin now to start to inculcate some different values and different beliefs over time. But I don't think these underlying beliefs, these are going to be very, very difficult to be changed even in an organizational context. So how do we know these? It's very difficult for I don't think even organizations might go here. Right? Organizations are not going to go here to explore, who I am as a person, my deeper beliefs. I don't think you're going to go there.
You need to.
No, you don't need to. But it impacts on how people might eventually work, or the kind of dedication they have to give to the organization. When it comes now to the organizational, like the core values of the organization, right? Because you have personal values, but when the organization now establishes its own values, this is the dissonance I'm talking about. So do my values, this is the question, so these are my personal values, and these are the organization's values. So this is the issue here. So if the organization's values contradict my personal values, is where you have a problem. Right? So Rory, in your case, if based on a particular belief system I have or a family tradition, I believe that I should be home at 6 o'clock to spend time with my children, but the organization is telling me you better stay here till 8 and 9 o'clock, you have a problem. Right? I know for me, when I had little children, my daughter is 30 and my son is 20, but one of the things I tried to do when I had little children, little toddlers, I tried to be there to help them with homework. So with my son particularly, I had to be there when he came home from school to help him with homework, to talk to him, and on weekends I had to find time for my son. But I know that some people in careers, the career takes precedence and they don't have time for the children, but that's their value and belief system, you see. So the jobs that I chose are not jobs that allowed me not to be able to spend quality time with my son in the evening, that I can go and play with him. Now we can go riding, you see. So that's why I'm saying here, folks, how do we prevent organizational values from contradicting? How can that, so we are moving away from the organization to the person. So how can you as a person prevent a situation in which your personal values become violated by the organization, by an organization, sorry? What can you do, or what can employees do to ensure that? What are our options?
Choose job where
Sorry?
have to choose a job or company which has the same values.
Simple. Okay. Job choice. And we put it in HR and career development, organizational choice. People don't understand. We have a choice in the organizations we choose, People, the way we have it is that we are dependent on organizations to hire us. But there's a paradigm shift, Tracy. We have the power to determine, I don't want to work for those type of organizations. And you have a choice. So Tina is quite correct. I will make a decision. I don't care how much money you are paying. I am sorry. I am not going to be working for your organization, because your values and beliefs are going to violate my own personal values and beliefs, you see. But again, other persons, if you look at working hours and time, people have different values based on, where they came from, your own orientation. So you would have to choose the organizational context if it is, say for somebody in medicine. If you want to become a doctor, you surely don't want regular hours. Because if you want to become a doctor or a nurse, but you only want to work from 8:30 to 4:30 or 9 to 5, you're really choosing the wrong profession. But if you want to be a doctor and you want to have a career path and fly a high flyer doctor, you must be prepared to work some very, very irregular hours, you see? Yes?
So what do you think about organizations that take a recruitment strategy where they're not very open and honest about the culture that does exist and expectations that does exist, and they try to make it sound like a lot rosier than it is? Doesn't that lead to a problem now that, I've told you that, don't worry, you'll be home in time.
Yeah,
Then you get in and you realize that you cannot left until when you have a patient there at the hospital, where you going?
People being sensitive because if they tell you it's something you interview and the unions get involved, there's certain things that just they can't come and tell you we expect you to be here from 6 a.m. until
But you should.
11
But you should.
a.m.
Tracy, you should.
The job description.
You have a moral responsibility to tell the persons that.
I've
You
had
need to be
one
honest.
that said you may be required to work outside of regular working hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, required to work outside of regular working hours, yes, but not non-stop. It's going to be a one-off. If we have a promotion, we expect you to be there. If we have but not it's number one, it cannot be mandatory, and number two, it cannot be every day. People will do that if they love. What you were doing?
I was doing
Journalism. If people love journalism, they will naturally do that. But to be in an interview and your employer tells you that people call you here for them because you want a job at the end of the day.
Yes, Donna.
The other side of the coin is that there are organizations that say they want changes. They are ready to change the culture. The culture starts to change and you become afraid. I've worked at least 2 organizations which have said that to me. We want to change things up. So you start.
You want to be an employer of choice. We are staff friendly.
So whatever reason they want to change, they may be too many people who work here for a long time and maybe set in their ways. And when you start to gradually implement things, and sometimes you got to cut. You got to cut. Because if you have a blood clot, it's cut. Unless some of that blood come out, right? So you have to cut, not necessarily cut staff, but cut the things that are not useful to the organization. And it obviously makes other people uncomfortable.
But in relation to...
So you're now associate. So say no, even though the organization wants this, they're not. Well, you are not going to be the change will be associated with you and not the organization.
But folks, the reality, organizations have a moral and even legal responsibility to be transparent and tell any potential employee the truth. Right? Maybe in the Caribbean and in our jurisdictions we can do this kind of nonsense and nothing happens. But you really can't be telling workers lies about a job. You give up one job for this and then you realize as you go ahead, they're adding on things and adding on. That is deception, and it is wrong, morally wrong, it's legally wrong. But I said in the Caribbean, because we don't have a lot of strict rules and regulations, a lot of employers hire you for one thing, but then there's so many other things you do, and because, as you said, because people might be scared and frightened, they might not really want to challenge it in court. And then court is such a long and lengthy and detailed process. But you really need to tell employees the truth. Now, in fact, this is something we are talking about here, the role of the employee. We'll look at the role of the employees, and then we'll look at an employer perspective. So we say that it's a challenging role to play, as he said. So just managing culture is a very complex thing, So how do you get people to embrace a culture? You can't force people to embrace a culture. And Donna, maybe your point, right? Any desired change to the culture of the organization has to be done through employees and by employees at all levels. Top management can't force change in a culture.
No.
But as you said, if you're promoting a change to a particular type of culture, and then it turns out it's different to what you want, right? So you've got to be very careful if you're talking about culture change, that you don't, So picture workers who really bought into this shift in culture, and when it is happening, management is getting second thoughts to say, well, look, they might not say it openly, but they start to pull back and put restrictions and regulations in place. So you think it's going to happen in this situation? Who is going to leave? Your best people, your most qualified and competent people will
Can you
leave.
say there will be a clash between the corporate culture and the organizational culture? Because a classical example, for example, a company I was working with, they had a policy whereas, let's say, from Monday to Thursday, you dress in business wear, and on a Friday, it's business casual.
Yes.
We had to deal with a client, and once they came in, they looked at the workers and they say, the workers look a little bit too stiff. So their thing was they need to dress more casual on an everyday basis.
Right.
So when the top management of the organization, we want to be more employee friendly, but then as usual, when you say casual, some persons start coming in looking as if they're dressed for the club instead of for work. And then they're saying, let's rethink back, pulling back that policy again, where you at the same time clashing with what the client would have wanted from you as a company that you're working with. So you're looking at that clash of corporate versus the organizational culture that's there already.
But I would blame management because what management should have done, management should have set the protocols. Management needed to set the protocols. When we say business casual, give examples of business casual so that you're clear. Instead of standard, right? Yeah.
I guess the thing was similar to what you had in the previous slide is you take for granted what is considered to be business casual because you expect if you're coming into the office, you look appropriate for work. You may probably wear a polo and a dressy pants, not necessarily to come in with cut-up jeans and a T-strap and say, I'm going to work. Right. Everyone takes it different.
So these are HR factors that could affect culture because we're talking about here, no culture, well, organizations would have cultures that move over time because organizations don't have people permanently. So managers change, presidents change, boards change, all kind of human resources change. So over time, especially when you have organizations that go into 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, those are very old organizations. So over time, the culture changes because what happens? But the cultures are changing because what significantly will cause the culture to change? I'm talking internally. Top managers, don't forget. The same what you're mentioning. It's the top managers and the board of directors who would establish policies and guidelines and framework for the organization. They develop the strategy and approve strategy. So as top managers change and as boards change, you will find the direction of the organization will change. Over time, the culture changes. Over time, the values will change, you see. So these are some of the things that could help to change culture, right? As you said, leadership. Who are the leadership taking over? Recruitment and selection for sure. So hire the people you want that fit into your culture. Right? Hire the people who fit into your culture. Right? Compensation could also influence, because if you pay a lot of cheap wages, you're going to attract people who might not be the best qualified. If you want the best, right? So companies that really excel around the world, they hire the best. And they pay top dollars, so people from all over the world come and they get some of the top jobs. So they really pull in a lot of, so that's how Microsoft and Apple, they don't get wealthy from American labor, Apple and Yahoo and all those become popular from immigrant labor, from all over the world. They hire the best. Don't care where you are, we will hire the best. So your recruitment and selection practices in itself will start to make changes, you see. So folks, once you start to get a diverse workplace, where there are people in one workplace, you have people from Germany, Finland, China, Singapore, Sudan, South Africa, Zimbabwe, Brazil, Barbados, Trinidad, Hong Kong. When you have a workplace that is very, very, very multicultural, as a lot of these high-tech industries are, you really have a really global environment. So how do they manage a lot of these global differences? And I suspect maybe what you said here is that they really have some clear protocols as to the kind of debates that are allowed in terms of the office environment, so that people respect somebody came from Pakistan. So if you have a Pakistani and an Indian working together, straight away, historically, there are differences. So if a Pakistani and an Indian came to work for Microsoft or work for Apple or work for Yahoo, I believe they will have protocols to ensure they do not get in any political debates or debates about the politics of Pakistan and India. They're not allowed on the job. You can talk about that when you leave and you go home in the bar, But on the job, you're going to talk about work, talk about if there are any social activities. Right? And I suspect that is some of the things that they will do. And here, you see, this is the one in making policies, rules, and regulations. Right? So you need to have some clear policies, rules, and regulations for the particular company that would prevent volatile discussions that can really fracture the organization. And I'm stressing multicultural environment. If you have a very homogeneous workplace, it's easy. Everybody has basically the same background, so there's no big problem. But the more diverse you become, that is where I think we start to get a lot of the issues. And I'm sure for you folks, some of you have seen head teaching at the university for a while. And I've seen a group of 5 and 6 people. Somebody from Antigua, somebody from Dominica, 2 and 3 people from Barbados, and they cannot work together. Cannot work. Conflicts. Perceptions, don't forget, different practices, timeliness, times, when you want to meet, right? How do you resolve problems? Tone. Right? Tone. So we are told that Bajans tend to be females tend to be more aggressive, Donna, than other females. That's what I am told by other people. Yeah, Bajan females tend to be very aggressive. I don't know if it's true. That's what I'm told by other people who experience.
I can see that.
You can see that. No, in fact, let me tell you, back in the 90s, right? The early 90s, they were some African students. They were lawyers, young lawyers, who came here to do postgrad studies in legal drafting, and they were like from East and West Africa, Ghana, Botswana, Kenya, and the biggest challenge they had, they told me, and they still have a lot of friends there when they go to Africa, and they said one of the things they couldn't deal with is the Caribbean woman. They said that they never experienced that amount of aggression in women, right? Aggression. Donna, I'm doing the reported speech, Donna. I'm doing the reported speech. I am telling you, Donna, I'm telling you what they said. There's what they would tell me. I'm telling you what they would tell me. As Africans coming to the Caribbean, for the first time, one of the biggest challenges they had is their perception was that our Caribbean women were in law. Because remember, at that time, the law faculty would have had a greater mix of Caribbean people. But they said they found that the Caribbean women in law were extremely aggressive, and they said they couldn't deal with it. They found it very difficult. They found it very, very difficult. Sorry? Please don't get defensive about it. It's how people perceive.
There's a difference of culture, so you have to be accepting, because in some cases they're not expecting, but in the Caribbean we push out girls to be, especially depending on what field they're going into, to be assertive in whatever they're doing.
Right, and that's the point I was saying to you when you have mixed groups. So, but for them, that's how they were able to verbalize in perceiving, and they didn't say assertive, they said aggressive. They found they were too aggressive. Right? But I'm saying, but if you know Africa, if you travel to Africa and you see, as you said, maybe the culture, right? The culture is maybe some male-dominated society, right? But it's grounded in their traditions, you see. So I'm saying, so here, if you have a class then of people from different backgrounds, from different parts of the country, of the Caribbean, and they come together at the university, you're going to see, and I see those problems coming out over the years when I used to teach a lot of undergrad classes, that even in the Caribbean students coming together have challenges in working. Sorry?
Did you force them to work together?
It's not like.
Let them form their own group. Because I think you should have forced them. Because then when they get into the workplace, they would know how to. Exactly. It's like they still don't have the skills they need to figure it out.
But no, even if you think the Caribbean is very maternal. Is very maternal, whereas Africa is more paternal. Those are the things that are more, that are more accepted in the different parts.
Because a lot of women have to leave the home here.
Exactly. So it's more maternal. A woman manages most of the things in the Caribbean homes.
Right.
So I guess that may have been a culture shock for them.
So I know Tina, so what she's talking about, that culturally, you had in the Caribbean for many decades, and most of the islands, a lot of the men did not take on their familiar responsibilities. So a lot of women actually manage the home and taking care of the children and managing budgets and feeding.
Definitely.
But a lot of men accept it, and then they had multiple families too, so they will have a family here and then children there. So that's, yeah. So women, a lot of women actually manage the home single-handedly, absent of father. So he might visit his different children in different homes. Yeah. So as Donna is saying, that so it's the woman then actually historically who would have been in charge of the home and managing all of the affairs and raising both their boys and their girls. But I think it's changing now, right? You would say it's changing, that a lot of the younger men, fathers are taking on more. I see with prams and lifting their babies and in the clinics.
But that's a show.
Yeah.
It's not
I don't think so.
No, it's changing. Now you're being cynical.
But that would be my personal view.
What do you say it's changing?
I see it's changing. It's open to interpretation for everyone because I grew up in a family. My father is there, my mother is there. Yes, they're married. So I may have a different viewpoint from someone who's growing up with a mother always being there and their father is visiting. Yeah. So for me, I'm accustomed to the men in my family. They're always there for their children no matter what. Yeah. So I will have a different viewpoint from everybody else.
Yeah, I think in modern times it's changing.
I find it's changing in modern times.
Yes, Rory?
Yeah. I don't think it's changing. I mean,
you don't think so?
Maybe I just speak from a limited experience, but if I look back at my high school classmates, they all have kids, but that's it.
They're not taking on the fatherly responsibility.
No, I mean, at least they're not doing it as a unit anyway.
I think that's what is changing. Before it was that they were not a unit and the father was just absent altogether. But I find now even if he and the mother are not together, the men are stepping up.
Yeah, they're still, I think they are.
Not in terms of the relationship, but in terms of their children.
I agree. Yes, it's changing.
Yeah.
So folks, check what we're saying here. Cultural values that employees bring to work affect the workplace culture. They influence employee behavior on the job, which is the point we're making. So folks, picture you have a very diverse workplace with multi-ethnic groups, multiracial groups, multicultural groups, multi-religious groups, an organization that has 5, 10, 15, 20,000 people, right? How do you really manage such groups? And I think that's the debate where we were talking about in the US. It's a big debate in Western Europe. It's a big debate in Asian countries. You know, how do we deal with all the immigrants, people from different countries coming? So I think it's a debate. I think we need to talk about it, but it's an issue that it will not go away. Right? Because I think the challenge is, I don't know if you all know, there's one global threat that will cause immigration to continue. That birth rates are actually declining in a lot of countries over the world, including Barbados. That a lot of women are not having babies, so birth rates are dying. So what is happening, I forgot the term, but there is a particular rate of rebirth that is necessary to perpetuate a particular group of persons. So there are a number of countries where the birth rate, the decline is so steep that they anticipate you will not be able to replenish the population in the next 30, 40 years. So populations are basically dying out and aging. So you have aging populations, people that are living older, but the replenishment rate is going down. So what would happen in terms of working people, you really need to bring in immigrants to do a lot of work until you sort this problem out. Where and I don't know if you all know, as I said, Barbados has a major problem in that our birth rate is actually in serious decline.
It's not a problem.
But the older people could do it then, the younger people are doing it.
Yeah. But the population died. So our problem is that we have a very aging population. A lot of people living to the 80s and 90s.
And the men who produce at a later
Right.
so they can continue.
But the population is dying. Right now, our population is really on the decline, you
It's
see.
not a problem. It's a local problem, but it's a good, positive global trend. Because globally, the population expansion is causing massive problems. So, but I agree that like Germany is doing it with less than 1 million migrants. They're compensating for their population problems with migration.
But Roy, I'm saying you don't have a choice because you have to have people who are of working age to work.
No, the
Yeah.
only reason it becomes a problem
Yes,
so
support
much
the
is
aging.
because of schemes like the Social Security schemes and so on that are built on this assumption of continuous expansion of the population.
But don't forget. In fact, as somebody said the other day in the US, the greatest myth is that the fact they say more Americans are on the Social Security than they are the immigrants. The myth is that. But the bigger point we are saying here is that because a lot of populations, especially in the Western world, I think most of the Eastern people, the culture is still to have a lot of children. And in Latin America, I think it's still like Mexico, it's still a lot of high birth rates. But because of that, in a lot of Western countries, that is why you have to maintain the immigrants are going to come in as labor. At what level they come in, the entry level, but that is where I think traditionally in the U.S., you have been bringing in immigrants, to fill jobs, critical jobs that Americans might not take. But I think the point we're making here is that as you have immigration, it wouldn't stop. I mean, the globe, if you look as long as man lived on Earth or humans lived on Earth, you had migration. Right? Migration is a constant thing. The issue now would be, as we are saying here, values. When people come to the workplace, they're going to bring their values. I think the challenge is, what can organizations do to ensure that as people come with their own value systems, that you have mechanisms that can neutralize somebody's personal values, right, from other organizational values, you see? Because some people can come and what they might do without and realizing it, they might join a workplace, especially if you join at managerial level and you now come to instill not your professional values. Yes. Values. So you have certain personal values of what is right or wrong. So you start to cascade your personal values in your workplace that might create a dissonance for workers who are not accustomed to somebody instilling their personal values. So I suspect what the organizations are saying here, you need to have some policies, procedures, and regulations that can actually guide and neutralize anybody wanting to bring their own personal values, that the organization's rules, somebody could challenge it then, and the organization would try to put something in place to neutralize it. And these are 7 primary characteristics of organizational culture, right? Innovation and risk-taking. And this is what the world needs now. We need risk-taking, innovation. That's one of the big things that are being pushed. When you look at the competitiveness index, attention to detail, right? That focuses on quality, outcome and performance orientation, people orientation, team and aggressiveness and stability, right? So these, I would say they're more Western values. Since a lot of the texts we use are Western. Well, the nature of competitiveness. When you look at the whole concept of competitiveness, it is based on aggression. When you look at the stock exchanges across the world, that's yeah. So competitiveness in itself is about aggression, fighting. I want to take control. I want to get power over you. So competitiveness is about a whole set of power relationships. You're dominated, but I want to move you to take control. I want to be the market leader, so I'm constantly pushing to take control of market forces. So the competitive environment in itself is a very aggressive environment. Shareholders, I don't know. We all are monitoring what is happening on the Dow, on the U.S. stock exchange. The city Dow again, all today plunging again. So you know what that means? Millions and hundreds of millions of dollars are being lost. They say it's very unstable and it's spreading all across the world. Is it Germany? You're getting a bit unstable too?
Right now, the German companies are doing pretty good, so the euro is growing, whereas the US economy is going down, which is great for the euro.
Yes, and Asia, so there's instability with certain Asian markets too, but the Dow, they say it is crashing up and down, really volatile. So the danger is, if that volatility continues, people will start to remove their money. And that creates in itself a big snowball effect, you see. But as I said, I think this is the characteristic of Western business culture and Western competitiveness. It's a very aggressive environment. You wouldn't survive in this competitive environment unless there's some measure of aggression in dealing with all of the competitive threats and other issues that are there. The Caribbean perspective, this is an interesting one I found. I thought I would share it with you out of a book that was written, an HR book written for Caribbean people. And this guy, Lincoln Marshall, was actually bringing an interesting perspective, right? So I don't know, but I always try, because don't forget we have our visiting students. So I don't know if you ever heard about John Canoe. You heard about Carnival for sure, right? Heard about Carnival?
Yeah, in Germany we celebrate it a bit different because I'm from Cologne and we also celebrate Carnival, but you celebrate.
But John Canoe, you ever heard about John Canoe?
No.
Right. So John Canoe is out of the Bahamas, right? Right, so it's really interesting thing about Junkanoo. I think it starts at 12 o'clock in the night. Right, so Junkanoo is a similar, yeah, they do a night parade, 12 o'clock, when it's cool and everything. Huh? No sun, yeah. Yeah, a lot, very cultural, very traditional, African oriented. Right, yeah. Right, so these are two like national festivals. And Junkanoo is very, very big in Bahamas. A lot of visitors go to it from all over the world. Huh? It's boring? But that's boring for you. But there are many people who, I think the Bahamians are crazy about Junkanoo. Wow. Oh, that's interesting. And so even in Guyana, actually, Guyana is now moving to Carnival because they had a parade, but they're actually now moving to a Carnival. Well, that's interesting. That's really cultural shift. So what we're seeing, folks, based on what your colleague is saying, that you're actually seeing a cultural shift toward this thing called Carnival. But what this guy is basically suggesting, that when the persons in Trinidad and Bahamas, the ones that believe in it, are involved in preparation, there's high levels of enthusiasm and exhilaration. In fact, in Trinidad, some people actually take leave from work, and for 4 and 5 months, they're just totally working on Carnival, preparing costumes in the bands. But the kind of commitment and the high level of commitment. So he's arguing, which is quite interesting, that somehow the spirit of Junkanoo and Carnival must be captured in what he called Caricentric mindset or Caricentric culture, where this enthusiasm, so he's arguing then, Tina, if I can get the energy and motivation and enthusiasm as people would put into Junkanoo transferred to the workplace, we have extremely productive people. Because in preparing for Junkanoo and Carnival, they are extremely productive. They're committed long hours. They will go in the band house from morning and night, 10, 11, 12 o'clock. They're there without anybody forcing them or telling them you have to be there because they want to be there. But it's an interesting perspective trying to get this spirit of Junkanoo. I think there was another guy, I forgot the country he was from, but he was actually trying to do research to look at the Caribbean festivals. And he called it, I think he was developing this concept called festival in the workplace, which is similar to this. And he's saying, if we can get the culture of festival energy and motivation translated towards workplaces, where workplaces become happy places that people wanted to go, and they were energized because the workplace was a place they felt fulfilled, that you would see production levels rising very, 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 very high. So the question is, for the Caribbean people, why is it that our workplaces don't have high energy, highly motivated people? Was that done?
I didn't say anything.
What do you think? Right. That's interesting. Yes, Rory?
I think we have two main cultural problems in the Caribbean, especially in the tourism-dependent islands. One, I would say, is the basic assumption that we have, at least among many people, of course not all, but many people in the Caribbean, especially in Antigua, that we believe service is servitude. So in terms of the service sector, it results in very poor customer service. The other one, I think, is political, because in order to win elections, we've filled up government service with a bunch of workers who are not hired based on their competency or their ability to perform, but really through a system of political patronage where it's rewards for party support and then not expected to work.
Yeah.
And we create this kind of lazy culture where you expect a paycheck for very little work done, from that. And then even if you go then into the private sector afterwards, you carry that. I mean, that's why private sector companies are not, at least in Antigua, are not jumping to hire no government workers, because they're saying, well, you used to work in the government sector, you're going to come with that lazy attitude,
Yeah.
So I would say that those are two cultural problems that I think that we have in the Caribbean.
Yeah. I would support you on them actually, because it happens in Barbados too, where election comes, you pot it with people, not because they are competent or their vacancies, and then I support you. Those are two critical issues, cultural issues. Maybe over time we will overcome them. So just two more things here that we would focus on, and that is looking at external adaptation, and just some of the things you could focus on for external adaptation. Because remember, we started by saying in culture you're looking at external adaptation and internal integration. So for the external adaptation, you're looking at mission, strategy, and goals. Because remember, they're driven based on competitive forces and things that are happening. You have your mission of things you will do to achieve your vision and the strategies and goals associated. And then measuring results and corrective action, and correction mechanisms. So the measurement is something they're saying in order to adapt, you need to be measuring things in an objective way, and remedial and repair strategies, and finally means to achieve goals, that looking at your structure, systems, and processes. So what it's basically saying, over time, organization structures would have to change, right? In terms of managerial levels or less managerial levels, the kind of systems, the kind of processes, and I would actually add their rules and regulations also. And then the second one for internal integration, which is now much more, I think, more complex, is their common language and conceptual categories. What are the common ways we use to refer to things, right? So we say in culture, a lot of cultures are defined by stories that people tell about things that happened in past, right? A lot of the root of a national culture, especially very old cultures, there are some stories that are told and retold, and a lot of the oral tradition is passed on through our folk songs. So in Antigua, the folk songs are very popular. Right? You still have older people really sponsoring folk songs. You don't have folk songs, right? So folk songs actually depict the essence of a culture, the old, I would say, the traditional culture. As we said before, traditional cultures are beginning to change because of a lot of external influences. So what about Germany? Similar things, that the rich heritage of folk songs that are still sung, or that is also dying away?
I mean, it depends on the region in Germany.
Right.
I mean, there are some regions, like for example, my home region, Cologne. We do not speak the dialect anymore, but during Carnival, all the songs are in the specific dialect, and also like speeches made. So then you kind of relive and reactivate the dialect and the traditions. So we try not to get it distinct. So.
What's your population now? Germany as a whole?
I think it's like 82 million.
82 million. So it's not a very big population.
I mean, for the size of the country, it's quite.
Right, it's quite big. Yeah. Finland, your population is.
Finland's quite small.
Yeah. 5 million. That's small, right? Yeah. So, any traditional folk songs that are repeated that still live, depicting your traditions and things like that? Right, yeah. So do you find folks, even at the country and western, you say country and western, but there are actually a lot of folk songs. The old traditional country and western folk songs about how people live, how they solve their problems, about family and things like that, relationships. But folk songs are very important, or I would put it this way, the oral tradition is very important to identifying people's cultures, you see, and the dialects that people utilize. I know across Africa there's a very big movement now trying to have common indigenous languages, because they have so many mix of languages. So Swahili and those languages, a lot of educated people are actually learning Swahili. So they're bilingual in that. Swahili is the normal language they use in communities, and then the English, of course, will be the language they use for business. Let me find this good. Okay, so internal integration, you're talking about group boundaries and identity. And this is what we talked about, folks. Group boundaries and identity. How do we respect each other's and the collective group boundaries? Right? Right? So I gotta say to you, that's what you were saying earlier, that in your organization there are some boundaries that have been established and in terms of what people should discuss or allowed to discuss. And so we're saying you need to set some boundaries. Rewards and punishment, meaning that if there's some, in order to reinforce the culture, there needs to be punishment for when things violate the norms or some rules and regulations that are there to create a particular culture, right? So rewards and punishment, obviously, that are legal. And rules for relationships, right? Which is what we were talking about earlier. So I gather they're saying here, for proper integration, it has to be done at the same point you were mentioning. The rules for the relationship. I am gay, you are not. You might not agree religiously that gay thing is correct because your religion told you that. I don't believe that, but we work together. So I respect the fact that you religiously don't think this right, but you are still prepared to work with me. And I am of the view it is okay, but I'm still prepared to work with you even knowing that, right? And I think that's the challenge where people then, as we say, they can't establish rules for a relationship because people cannot move beyond their own prejudices, right? And they can't deal with it, you see? So you don't have to, in other words, I think the point I'm making here about the root of relationship is that I don't have to agree with your position not to respect you. So I can disagree with your position, Donna, but I still respect you. And I can treat you like an equal. And I think that's the point that they're basically trying to make here, the rules for relationships. Right? But again, saying it is one thing, but where people have very strong, rigid, and inflexible positions, yeah, when it's deep in their heart, the dissonance is what's going to prevent people from actually reaching out. You understand, Tina? Right? So if you have very strong prejudices about something, right, and you're not prepared to see another perspective, you don't have to agree, but you can say, but I can see another perspective. And I think that's where you could have, creating rules for the relationship would not be possible then. Right? So it's like diplomacy. The only way you're going to stop a civil war is when two parties begin to say, all right, let's stop fighting. So even if one party wins, that will not stop the civil war. So even if one party wins, you still have to sit with the person who was beaten to come to a point, okay, so that we will not have another civil war in future when you get powerful again. Let's see if we can set some rules for the relationship. Right? And I think to some extent that's what the US had to do. If you remember the Civil War where the United States was divided, the South from the North. So again, the federal government won, but they still have to sit down and make some they have to still give some leeway to those Confederates who they did not change their views. So they had to do a give and take to set up some rules for the relationship, so that they can have some kind of stability and some kind, even if you call it an unquiet peace. And then power, authority, and status. How do we determine what gets done, and who has the right to change direction? Right? Power, authority, and status. Where does this reside? Who is responsible for this one? Power, authority, and status. How do we determine what gets done and who has the right to change direction? Is it the CEO, the president, general manager? Sorry? The board? But don't forget the board sets policy. The board doesn't deal with it day to day. So maybe the board.
If you think, but if the board sets policy, they could also set what your job description could be. So they would determine how much power you should have. Which, if they determine how much power you have.
I mean for the leader.
For the leader.
Okay.
So then you'd end up, if you know how much power that you have, it also will undermine what kind of authority you have based on the status that you carry.
So you're saying then, at the highest level, the board should establish the type of CEO or president or general manager they want, and particular job duties and responsibilities should be clearly established to determine the direction they want to go. I can see with that. Anybody any divergent opinions on this one? And the final point we want to make is this, folks, that culture contributes to the bottom line. Indirectly, it's not a direct link. But it can impact on the company's sustainability, because if it is disruptive, if your culture is a disruptive culture, there's a lot of conflicts and tensions. You know, there are a lot of unresolved issues. People are fighting for rights and fighting for benefits. That can be very disruptive if you have competing groups within the organization. So that's why organizations try to have what we call their own corporate values and norms, so that everybody feels that he or she is on the same page, you know, despite what race, religion, creed, you know, orientation, sexual orientation, religious orientation, we still have to work within the same organization, and we need to respect that people have these differences, the differences based on your values, your beliefs, and you don't have to change your values and beliefs. But as we said, we end by saying that, which I got this thing, that's fine. You know, my view is that when you hire people, you should make sure that there is some close marriage between the corporate values and the values of the person that you're hiring. Because you really can't underestimate the power of the values and the beliefs that people bring to a job. And as I said, a very simple example I had is if my value system says I must be there for my children on evenings and on weekends. So if I take a job because I need the money, that says you might have to work weekends from time to time and nights, and then when I get the job, I am being rostered weekends and nights, it creates a problem, because you then start to say, but you know, but my son has this thing on weekend, my son has football, my son, and this is unfair. And people actually start to say the organization is unfair. You know, my son has an event and you have rostered me. But as an HR practitioner, I've seen that, you know, people take jobs.
It's a cheap way out of it, you know.
In what sense?
We had the most Seventh-day Adventist conference.
Yeah.
You do have some persons that will
religious
do that.
belief does not allow me to work.
Yes, some
Yeah.
people do come with that. They will go.
Yes.
I got a friend that she actually switched her program. We went to Bahamas from the time I moved to tourism management because she could not work
Right.
on Friday nights. And I had another girl that is of the same religion, but she's still continuing with
Flexible, right? Some people are flexible, some are not.
Yes,
Right,
some
yeah.
people are flexible. I've actually had
Yeah,
where I
some
had
are
to
not.
interview someone and they didn't make it known that for religious reasons they would not be able to work on the Saturday, even though it's clearly stated in the job that you would have to do that.
So what would an HR manager do not to discriminate against persons? Somebody is being interviewed for a job. How do you not discriminate against someone who indicates he or she is Adventist and can't work Friday evening to between Saturday evening? How would an HR person deal with such a situation? What do you say? What do you do?
You could ask the person.
Flexible. Sorry.
I guess try to be as flexible as possible. At the same time, she's working on the panel, but she just won't work on Friday nights and Saturdays. Like, on each person.
Some people ask that question if you want flexible.
Tracy, you got to move from the door. Tracy said no in front of the AC and complaining it's cold. Come up in the corner. What do you do? What do you tell? You're the HR manager. You just finished an interview. Person is top-notch candidate, but they announce I'm Adventist, and the job requires them. They could work weekends, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. What do you say?
I think it's not really discrimination if they are not fitting the job description. I mean, in the bank I'm working at, we have some people who are blind, for example, but they are great with their job, and you can help this with providing them with special computers and stuff like that. They can still do their job. But if your working hours or opening hours of your branch are from Monday to Saturday, and they're not able to work on Saturdays, and the job requires them to, they are not a fitted candidate.
So what do you tell them?
They don't fit in
No, they fit the requirements.
No,
It's just
because
they fit the job requirements. It's just they cannot work certain days. Don't forget a job.
But the
In terms of
If
qualifications,
they do a
yeah.
full-time job, then they have to be there full-time.
Yeah.
I mean, all days.
but if you accept them in, and then when you have these converts too, it severely impacts the balance that you have in the workplace. Because you work on a shift system, suddenly Nicole has to do every Saturday, and it's because.
but what do you tell? Suppose the person is in number one for the job. What do you tell them?
Well,
They know that they're number one.
Huh? So this is what I would tell them folks when I was hiring. I said, look, we want to offer you this job, but this job requires you to work from Monday to Sunday. Your roster between Monday and Sunday. Are you willing to take the offer? Well, I'm an Adventist. I can't really say we are willing to offer you the job, but this job requires you to work between Monday to Sunday. It's your offer.
That's just diplomatically asking them.
It's not, no, it's legal. It's not diplomatic. It's legal, and that.
It's legal, but that's you being diplomatic, telling them, okay, yes, I'm giving you
It's
these
not,
are
it's
what
not
it is.
diplomatic. In other words, I am offering you the job.
Yeah.
But remember you said earlier some people are flexible, so you need to make a decision.
Exactly.
You need to make a decision whether I am flexible and I will work. So it's not diplomacy, it is clear legal language. I am offering the job and I am telling you how you have to work. You need to refuse it. So the record will show I offered you the job and you were not prepared to work between Friday and Saturday.
Then what do you do when you have people at the company who suddenly decide they're Seventh-day Adventists?
What do you mean they convert?
Yeah. And then you roster them, they call in the union, and then suddenly you have a big fight on your hand, you know? And then if you don't roster them on the Saturday, the rest of the employees
I'm gonna start asking
It's always
questions.
one.
and see-
Rory, the big mistake is legally, once you begin to roster them once, you're in trouble. So once you begin to roster them off between that period, you've given the union argument. All you need to indicate to the person who is converted, but this is your current contract. If you don't work the thing, you're going to breach your contract. You understand? That's all you got to say. But what organizations would do, they try to bend so what happens then? Anybody else that comes can say, I am Adventist. They will not work that period. So the thing is to stick out to basically say, you come and you have converted. You have made a decision, but this is how you have been working on your contract for the last 3, 4, 5 years. You understand? So yes. But I think But what I'm saying to you, if the organization wants to be flexible, you can. But you got to know that once you begin this flexibility, thereafter, you cannot tell any person that is an Adventist, you cannot hire them because that is discrimination now, because you have at least one employee who does not have to work because of that. Yeah. So the organization has to make a decision. We will waive the conditions that Adventists don't have to work. But once you do it once, you've actually everybody you set a precedent. And the union then will be the shark then Rory making sure that any other Adventist cannot work between that time period. Yeah. Then we will link forward the HR planning. So you would see when we talk about HR planning, looking at preparing jobs, some of the issues we mentioned before. What is this culture? Your point. What is the culture we want to create? So the kind of jobs that you create actually would influence the type of culture. Because the same point Rory was mentioning, if I want a culture where people work extended hours, you could actually craft the job descriptions in such a way that they are so flexible that people can work anytime, any hours. So you have job profiles that are very broad and not specific. Right? But once you have specific job descriptions, people can say, so what employers have started doing over time, having job profiles that are very broad and very open, which give them the way that people can work in different areas and they can be shifted to different roles and responsibilities. Now the unions argue that it's exploitation, you're taking advantage of workers, that they need the fixed, rigid job descriptions, but employers have been trying to push away from these very rigid job descriptions to more flexible more flexible job descriptions, you see. But again, that differs from culture to culture, to country to country, right? As to this shift, the more flexible, what we call it, job profiles. So what you can do, just take a break and stretch your legs. Culture is always one of those heated debates. It